to just introduce Vanessa a little bit.
Okay.
Vanessa Ricon is the Chief of Technical Services for GMOs. She's at the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environment of Spain. Vanessa has been collaborating with us at the CBD Secretariat on a number of issues, in particular socioeconomic considerations and also in the BCH. Thank you for this time. Thank you, Vanessa, for accepting also the presentation. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Rincon, and I'm currently working for the General Directorate of Agricultural Productions and Markets in the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environment of Spain. I am here with Esther Esteban, our national focal point in Cartagena Protocol. We would like to talk about Spain's experience using biosafety clearinghouse in the CBD. The biosafety clearinghouse is a mechanism set up by Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety to facilitate the exchange of information on living modified organisms and assist the parties to better comply with their obligations under the protocol. During the 7th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Cartagena Protocol, it was approved the decision number 2 related to operation and activities of the biosafety clearinghouse. It's about the importance of facilitate communication for the editing and updating of records submitted by parties to the biosafety clearinghouse, and it urges parties and invites other governments to inform their representatives in other international fora of the possibility of retrieving electronically all data registered in the BCH in order to make them available through other related websites. Furthermore, it urges parties to register in the BCH all their final decisions on the first intentional transborder movement of living modified organisms for intentional introduction into the environment of the party and related risk assessments as requested under the protocol, with a special emphasis on the first intentional transborder movement of living modified organisms intended for field trials. It also stresses the importance to continue its collaboration with other biosafety databases and platforms, including those of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and other clearinghouses of the Convention and of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Here we can see on the left the main page with all the information and the latest news and updates. When you select the protocol where the arrow is pointing, you branch to another screen, the one we have on the right. In this screen there is a list of parties in the left column, and then you can select the country you would like to see or update the profile. This list contains information about the date of signature and the latest communication on the ratification and entry into force from the depositary of the protocol with the date of the instrument of ratification or acceptance or approval. Here we have an example of a country profile where you could see all the information you have updated, the different documents and the number of records you have for each one. In the case of Spain, we can see different types of documents. For example, we have two competent national authorities, and we have loaded 181 documents, either country decisions or any other communication, and we have loaded 184 risk assessment as well. As we can see, in Spain we have a national website and only one national focal point. First of all, we would like to show our national website. It provides information on legislation, domestic law, and European regulation on GMOs. It also includes the composition and the minutes of the National Commission of Biosafety and the composition of the Spanish political body, the Interministerial Council of GMOs. In this page, the most interesting thing in order to use the BCH is the list of notification and authorization about activities of contained use, deliberate release, and placing on the market of GMOs carried out in Spain. And we can also find information about environmental risk assessment reports and procedure of public information about deliberate release and contained use of activities risk. We have all the information we need to update the BCH, so it's important to keep this information up to date. And on the other hand, in the country profile at the beginning of the presentation, we could see the number of competent national authorities, and in Spain there are two. With relation to central government, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environment is the organism that has the competence in relation with the living modified organism. The ministry has got two general directorates with different missions. In the General Directorate of Quality and Environment Assessment is the National Commission of Biosafety, which is the scientific and technical body. And in the other General Directorate, we have got the Interministerial Council as organism of decision maker. We can see in the picture. In the country profile, we could see as well the Spanish legislation, the National Act 9/2003, establishing the legal regime governing the contained use, deliberate release, and marketing of genetically modified organisms, and the Royal Decree 178/2004, approving the general regulations governing the development and implementation of the Act 9/2003. Central government is responsible of the trials previous to placing on the market and imports, and the Biosafety National Commission provides the risk assessment, and then the decisions are voted by interministerial council. Okay, in relation with countries' decision, we could see at the beginning of the presentation that there were 181 records in the country profile. Most of them are approval of the use import with conditions. We have chosen number 101718 as an example. When we try to include a new decision in the BCH, we have to include more information before. Part of this information is mandatory. We have 3 screens to fill out. The first one is about general information. Is this one. And here we have to specify the title of the decision, the date, and the competent national authority responsible for the decision. As we have said before, we have 2 competent national authorities. It's important to verify if these records associated with the record being submitted are already registered in the BCH. So this information must be included in the database. In this case, the General Directorate of Agricultural Productions and Markets, with its Interministerial Council as the political decision maker, is the competent. We have to register all the competent authorities before. Then we can specify the title and the date of the decision. And then we have the following screens, where we have to introduce more details. Another data we have to include are the applicants or the importers' contact details. As you can see, it's a new record, so it needs to be included. The same situation happens with the LMO identification and the risk assessment. The format requires or may require reference to other records that has to be included. In the case of deliberate release, you have 4 documents: SNF, environmental risk assessment, the results report, and the decision. In these documents, we can find the unique identifier for the LMO and the name of the terminator genetic element. Sometimes unique identifiers are not registered in the BCH. In that case, we have asked for to the CBD Secretariat, and they need the unique identifier or the terminator genetic element to include the LMO in the database. In relation with the risk assessment, we have the same situation. It's a new record we have to include. Here we have an example of risk assessment. The objective of the risk assessment is to identify and evaluate on a case-by-case basis the potential adverse effects of the GMO, direct or indirect, immediate or delay on human health and the environment, which may have the deliberate release or marketing of GMO. The CMB, the Commission of Biosafety, is the scientific and technical body assigned to the Ministry of Agriculture. Is the consultative body of Spanish competent authorities entrusted to assess, inform, and advise on the potential risks to human health and environment of all activities with GMOs. They have experts from scientific institutions that who are selected on the basis of their scientific expertise in all fields, with technical representatives from different government departments. Environmental risk assessment for deliberate release of GMOs in Spain provides assessment based on information submitted by the applicant, identification and assessment case by case of potential adverse effects of GMO, direct or indirect, on human health and environment. This organism, the Commission of Biosafety, requests to implement management strategies under field trials conditions and recommends for further case-specific studies of potential impacts on biodiversity when field trials are conducted. The results of these studies have to be reported to the CNB before conducting a new experimental trial with the same GMO. In order to register information and register a new record, there is a common format. The complement of this format requires or may require reference to other records. It's important to verify if records associated with records being submitted are already registered in the BCH, as we have said before. For risk assessment, for example, it's also recommended that new records are completed in the following order. In competent national authorities, this is a mandatory. Contact details, this is an optional data, and living modified organisms, that is mandatory. And last, we can share information about the national focal point. As we can see in the last box, Spain has only one national focal point. And in relation with the national report, the first national report has been submitted before the 1st of November this year, and there has been a reporting format prepared in the BCH for the collection of data for the first national report as required under the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. It consists of a series of questions based on the requirements of the protocol, as well as questions that relate to indicators of the strategic plan for the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety for the period 2011-2020. The reporting format has been developed within the context of some decisions taking into account comments for the improvement of the reporting format received from parties during the second national report exercise and as the recommendation of the Compliance Committee. The general principles that have been applied in the development of the third national report are as follows. The retention of all questions from the second national report format that require regular updating, the introduction of all questions from the survey on the indicators, and the selection of all questions from the second national report format whose answers are already available to the Secretariat through the Biosafety Clearinghouse. Responses to these questions will help parties review to the extent to which they are successfully implementing the provisions of the protocol. The report is intended to cover implementation activities undertaken between the presentation of the second national report and the date of the reporting for the third national report. It's important that parties engage all relevant stakeholders in the preparation of the report in order to ensure a participatory and transparent approach and the accuracy of the information requested. And finally, we have some tips in order to use the database. First of all, keep the national website up to date. perhaps using an Excel sheet can be useful to organize all the information you have in the country page, the national website. And as Biosafety Clearinghouse searches interfaces in a way that allows the grouping of results by thematic areas, it's important to organize the national database and your own files in the same way. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. This is again Manuela from the CBD Secretariat. I recognize a question directed to you, and thank you very much for your presentation. I recognize a question from Asami to you, Vanessa, and the question is, I suppose by saying, there are two questions actually from Masami. The first question is, does it mean that Spain conducted its own risk assessment, not EFSA? To some extent you already answered that, but if you could elaborate a little more. And there's another question from Masami. I suppose by saying risk assessment you mean environmental risk assessments, or does it include both environment and food safety risk assessments? If you could briefly, Vanessa, please answer those two questions. I don't know if you noticed, but your microphone is muted.
Sorry. Yes, we make environmental risk assessment, and we take into account environment and human health. And we have an organism that makes this environmental risk assessment. Our National Biosafety Committee is the organism that make that assessment.
Thank you, Vanessa. I recognize also another question is where is the first point of collection and entering data in the database? Are these borders, production points, or lab centers? So it's a question from Ahmad Wali, excuse me, and again, it's where is the first point of collection entering data in the database? Either borders, production points, or lab centers? Vanessa, again, your mic is off.
Could you repeat the question? I was reading in the chat box, and could you repeat the question?
Of course. And this will be the last question. There are a number there, but if Vanessa doesn't have time to answer, we will answer these questions later. I also recognize a question to the Secretariat, but Vanessa, the question to you is where is the first point of collection and entering data in the database? If these are the borders, production points, lab centers, I guess we could also include notifications there, an application coming for importation. If you want to reply to that, if not, I can also give some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yes, we have the applicants that we study the applicants in the CMB and the Commission National of Biosafety. When all the information is public, and we have all in our website, and then we introduce the data in our database.